Bottoms up. Graphics cards. Graphics cards. There are graphics cards in the market. High-end GPUs. Now, you're probably getting bombarded with a ton of GPU content right now. Rightfully so, as AMD just took some shots at NVIDIA in the prosumer enthusiast grade graphics cards, which is cool enough. I'm not discrediting any of that content. I'm consuming a lot of it myself right now. But what does this all mean in the grander scale of gaming itself? Actually, it's quite a bit. We're a little less than 2 weeks away from the next-gen console releases in the Xbox Series X and the Series S and the PlayStation 5, both of whom are using this new AMD RDNA 2 architecture in their GPUs. However, a big difference here is that those consoles are marketed towards the general consumer, whereas the new graphics cards from both AMD and NVIDIA are targeted at enthusiasts. Now, I know there's always a conversation and an argument and discussion between console owners themselves and then the console players in general and the PC gamers, and I think I'm going to ruffle some PC gamer feathers with this video. Now, this is going to be a little bit of speculation, but we can make some educated guesses as to the direction of gaming based on these AMD cards and considering that that architecture exists in the upcoming consoles. We don't have a ton of benchmarks or anything like that on the AMD cards yet, but this channel doesn't really focus on those nitty-gritty details. I think I'm going to let the pros handle that side of it, but I want to talk about how this impacts gaming to you, the average person. As consoles move closer and closer to PC-like architecture with their GPUs and the way that things are optimized, the conversation always comes up as to whether or not it makes more sense to either buy a console or build your own PC. I think you can make valid arguments for either, and it really comes down to preference at the end of the day for you. However, don't get caught up in the hype. There is no clear winner when it comes to what system and what platform you'd rather game on. At the end of the day, just game. Now, I know that's a statement that some of you might take issue with, but let me explain. When we're talking dollar for dollar, the time to set up and the ease of use, that's really where consoles gain an upper hand in the market as a whole. Without consoles, one could argue that gaming doesn't become the massive multi-billion-dollar industry that it is today. While a PC is quite a bit more useful and versatile than a console by itself to the average home, when it comes to just plugging in and playing video games, you just can't beat the setup of a console. You plug in the power and then you go. And that's without even mentioning the price discrepancy of trying to build a PC that's going to perform on par or better than a console. I get it. PC gaming has been able to do 4K gaming for a long time. You've had ray tracing for a little while. I have a 2080 Super in my PC. Don't get me wrong here. However, let's just look at startup costs of gaming. On a console, you can buy a PlayStation 5 for $500 or an Xbox Series X for $500, or you could get a Xbox Series S for $300 or a digital version of the PS5 for $400. On the enthusiast side of the release with AMD and NVIDIA, you have the NVIDIA RTX 3080, which clocks in at $700, the RTX 3090, which clocks in at a whopping $1,500. Now the AMD RX 6800 is $580, the 6800 XT at $700, or the 6900 XT at, while $500 cheaper than the 3090, is still $1,000. We're talking about an entire console that has everything that you would need to play games versus a single component for a PC build that you would need to find the rest of the parts for. Yes, I know that we're comparing enthusiast-grade GPUs to mid-level consumer-type GPUs that exist in the consoles that are aimed at the masses. But that's quite an important aspect for most people that just want to play video games. However, what I'm really looking at is the AMD architecture that's now applied to the consoles that may inform us the type of performance we can potentially expect on any upcoming mid-tier cards. Knowing that the new AMD Radeon cards are going toe-to-toe with NVIDIA at a better power efficiency, just about the same performance for a cheaper price point, most likely means that NVIDIA's mid-range GPUs are going to have to be just as competitive or competitively priced enough to suddenly make building a PC a viable option in place of a console. Pound for pound, I still don't think that that's going to happen, but it's going to make that margin a little bit closer. It's going to close that gap for someone that's a little bit willing to spend that extra $100, $200 for a future-proof nothing's future-proof, in a more modular type situation as you get with a PC. Obviously, we don't really know exactly how it's going to work out, and of course, these consoles were never going to compete with these enthusiast-grade cards, but for the first time ever, you're getting that PC-type performance on your television at a relatively accessible price for a new console at least. And honestly, for all the hype and attention that the GPUs always get, the move to SSDs is going to be the biggest difference maker. This is the one part that I might be a little more loose on, consoles holding back game development, but it really is going to make a difference as developers will now be able to make better decisions for their games. You don't have to deal with as many elevator sequences or narrow hallways or loading screens really, and it's going to be those subtle changes that I think really matters. I think we've reached a point of performance where graphics can continue to advance and lighting really is going to make the biggest difference in feeling next gen. Not only can we start getting some real lifelike type games, but the high performance coming to the household means that that gap closes and it potentially pushes some people to explore PC gaming a little bit. So you see, don't try to set me on fire or anything. I'm also advocating for PC gaming a little bit. I mean, when you really think about it, I think that it's very cool that we are getting to a point that it's pretty difficult to tell the differences in graphical fidelity between two consoles and even PC performance in some cases. The bleeding edge is always going to exist and that's always going to perform better, but you're paying a lot of money for a difference that I do believe people can tell apart, but care much less about when it comes to gameplay. Either way, I think you can't go wrong, whether it's buying a console or starting to look at mid-range PC builds. Although I'd probably wait a little bit to see what the mid-tier cards are, or if you know you're going to play on PC and you're definitely not going to go console, just go ahead and buy it. The discussion is always going to be there. Is it better to game on PC or is it better to game on console? I think the gap has closed quite a bit, especially when you consider pound for pound, dollar for dollar. It's still consoles on that side of it, by the way. But on the flip side, the enthusiast market is always going to exist, so anyone that wants to drop their $2,500 on their super awesome PC build, go for it. I mean, if you can do it, why not? But if we're getting closer to a point where the average living room or bedroom TV can deliver that super immersive, high frame rate performance that PC gaming has had for a while, I think it's only a win for consumers. So thank you AMD for really pushing NVIDIA and Intel for that matter. Competition is always good. I'm going to be making a couple of videos making a case for PC gaming and then making a case for console gaming, so make sure you subscribe so you stay up to date on those videos. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social. All links are going to be in the description. As always, thank you for watching and I'll catch you next time.